Greetings friends, Reformed Stoic, back with another video. My message for you today is that I refuse to hate who the internet hate machine tells me to hate. It's interesting how so many of these examples are kind of popping up in my face lately. I only have 3 of them for you right now. I'm sure there's more, but it seems like fate for all of these stories to just kind of be coming into the spotlight in front of me all at the same time, which has led to me making this video. Now, just to list off the people real quick that I'm going to talk about, it's going to be Mike Van Wyck, Wes Watson, and Trevor Jacob. So let's go ahead and start with Trevor Jacob because I was just watching one of his videos. Back in like 2017, 2018, I don't remember exactly, around that time, could have even been a couple of years earlier, like 2015, 2016, I started going down this rabbit hole on YouTube of watching people who hop trains. And I eventually found Trevor Jacob. Now, he has a track record of getting in trouble with the law. If you watch some of these compilations he has, like you can watch the video on his channel of how he turned his house into a skate park, the compilation looks like the embodiment of early 2000s jackass skate culture. It's just such a throwback to the 2000s. You know, you wonder, it's like, where did all these people go, you know, after the days of like Tony Hawk's Pro Skater and Jackass? And they're still alive, man. They're still out there jumping out of planes and flipping bikes. And he's some sort of an Olympian. I think he was an Olympic snowboarder. And this guy is completely reckless. Growing up, I had a lot of friends who would snowboard. You know, I lived in Alaska. They'd go to like Alyeska to snowboard. They skateboarded. I was never good at that stuff. You know, eventually I kind of got into lifting weights and a little bit of martial arts, but as far as like doing kick flips and ollies, and I never even figured out how to ollie on a skateboard. I have never had that kind of coordination, and I think I'm pretty cemented now in my 30s that that's just never going to be a part of my life. But I found his channel through his train hopping, and I enjoyed his content. Now, what happened to Trevor Jacob? Well, he ended up getting a pilot's license, and he started making content with this little airplane he had, this little like float plane type of a deal thing. It's not a float plane, it's just some sort of a tiny aircraft. I don't know exactly what it's called. But basically, he posted this video where he wanted his audience to believe that the plane was failing in the sky. And he had a parachute on, so he had to bail out of the plane, and then he was in the mountains somewhere, and after like hiking for 5 hours, he came across a car, and they basically rescued him. Now what happened is that it was investigated, and because of all of the camera angles that they got of the plane crash, it basically became evident that there was no way it was a freak accident. He was completely prepared for this specific scenario to happen. So it was basically concluded from the investigation that he purposely bailed out of his plane to create this video. And looking at his other content, looking at his history, you know, he got busted by the cops for train hopping, and he's a pretty reckless dude. He made a video about the repercussions of being an adrenaline junkie. I mean, the kind of high that you get from jumping out of an airplane, which used to be on my bucket list, but, you know, after hearing some horror stories, because every now and then, like, something happens, and that's it, man. Like, jumping out of an airplane, I'm not going to say you're an idiot for doing that, but the way my mind works is like, you know what, let's just not, and then I'll never die falling out of an airplane. But anyway, I digress. This guy is a loose cannon. It's just not really surprising to me that he would kind of do something reckless like this, because that's his personality and that's who he is. But this was over the top. this was an airplane. I mean, an airplane could hurt people. An airplane could cause a lot of damage. We know about that because of things like 9/11. So he did something very reckless that could potentially cause harm to buildings and people, and it could have potentially hurt a lot of people. Now, my take on it is that it didn't, and he served his time. I think he's just now uploading all of these videos to YouTube again, making it seem like, and I remember hearing about this about maybe like 6 months ago or longer ago. So he was sentenced to 6 months in prison for this reckless endangerment from an airplane. Now, there are people leaving comments on his videos like, what are you doing? Don't do this to yourself. Like, get off the internet. I saw this ridiculous comment today. I watched this video of turning his house into a skate park. It's all old footage from like 2020. And somebody in the comments was saying like, nobody even knows who you are, dude, except for thousands of people who hate you. And it was so ridiculous because in the video you can see he's like hanging out with all of his friends. Freaking Steve-O was at his house. I mean, this guy is kind of like, I want to say like a B-list celebrity. I mean, he's an Olympic snowboarder, and he had an internet presence for being this reckless dude who skydives. And right before he got in trouble, he was trying MMA, and he uploaded his MMA fight, and he got his butt kicked. But that's what happens when you haven't been doing it your entire life. And so that's the first one on the list. My opinion of this guy has not really changed. My take on it is like, it was very stupid of you to do what you did with that plane. Luckily, no one was hurt. You did your time. It's over. You're free now. I think he should still be able to have a YouTube channel. I'm still going to watch his content. I still think he's a cool dude. And I'm just seeing some of these comments like, nobody knows who you are. Stop acting like a celebrity. There's only thousands of people who hate you. That is the voice of the internet hate machine, my friends. And something that you're going to hear me just kind of mentioning and passing in my videos, maybe leading up to me making a full-on documentary, is a lot of those commenters are sock puppets as a part of Operation Earnest Voice, which tie back to Intrepid Corp, which is a government-funded agency that uses Chinese censorship techniques to try to manipulate the internet into thinking that a lot of people overwhelmingly think things when it's really just all of these sock accounts that are controlled by people in an Air Force base. Okay? Like, the military is on the internet. You can look this up. The Guardian wrote an article about this way back in 2013. I'm not going to go on and on about this in the video, but I know from experience that there are elements on the internet that are not natural, that literally try to make you hate people. It's an internet hate machine. And furthermore, I know some of the people involved in it who I've uncovered as being Satanists or having a disdain toward Christianity and an alignment with Satanism. This is a real thing. But irregardless of that, because then, normies get sucked into it, I think those kind of things set the standard sometimes, and then normies are literally just being told who to hate. So I'm going right on down the list here because I think that one is like the most ridiculous. He did something stupid. It's totally in line with his personality. Luckily, no one was hurt. Luckily, he wasn't hurt. And I don't really care. You did your time. Proceed with your YouTube channel, buddy. So the next one is Wes Watson. Now, I'm doing these in order of like how much I kind of feel like these people deserve the hate, okay? Mike Van Wyck is going to be last because he basically loses that competition. But Wes Watson. Now, this is somebody that I was also, interestingly enough, watching their content pretty close to the same time. It was a little bit later, I think, 2017. Around that time, I was watching a lot of Wes Watson videos. He has a lot of fascinating stories about prison. There's even clips of me way back when joking about some of the things Wes Watson said. I really enjoyed his demeanor. It's like, you think you're fucking tough in prison because you're a big, strong guy? I knew a guy who was 5'2", 300 pounds, and he had swastikas tattooed all over his head, and he freaking busted this guy's face in with a wrench. It was pretty extreme, but that was like my Wes Watson impression. I used to talk about him on stream a while back. I've probably watched hours of his content, and eventually I kind of got over it. I heard all of his best prison stories and just talking about the kind of mindset that you develop in prison. So this guy kind of pops him up in my feed lately because of his take on the Mike Van Wyck versus Jeff Nippard thing. And he also popped up in my feed maybe 6 months to a year prior because he was on the Fresh and Fit thing. It was some sort of a Fresh and Fit panel, and he got into it with some guy, and I can admit that he looked bad. See, I'm trying to admit that these people did something wrong. With Trevor Jacob, I still think he's ultimately like a great guy, and he did something really stupid. Luckily, nobody was hurt, and that's it. But with Wes Watson, it's like he really was being cringe on the Fresh and Fit podcast panel, and his take on Jeff Nippard is definitely like a little less than what's the word I'm looking for? Stationary or cordial, or there's just a particular word that I'm searching for and I can't find it. It's kind of a shit take. For the record, I had kind of a shit take on the Jeff Nippard situation as well, but to briefly summarize, I am a small guy. I come from Kodiak, Alaska, which is like a rowdy fishing town. I dealt with some bullying, and in my experience, there was nobody to save you. There was no filming yourself and garnering sympathy from the internet. There's probably a part of me that I've kind of had to move away from because of the way my life went that should be happy. It's like, wow, this smaller guy is getting this justice and help from the internet when he was ultimately unjustly treated by Mike Van Wyck. But I guess you could almost say it comes from a space of jealousy, or just most small guys who get bullied by a bigger guy, they just have to live with it, and they don't have like the internet jumping to their side. And I just tend to think Mike Van Wyck should learn his lesson, but I don't know if he should like go to prison to say that it was assault charges. I mean, I think he should be kicked out of the gym. But, I don't know. I tend to think that most people probably think I have a shit take on it. And like I said, because now we're talking about Mike Van Wyck, that guy gets last place because I sympathize with him the least. But back to Wes Watson. If I can make any excuse for how Wes Watson is, he spent time in prison. And now there's all these people making clips about him, trying to say he's a lol cow. And I gotta say, man, as somebody who in the past people called me a lol cow, it's like, well, if you're gonna call Wes Watson a lol cow, that's really like diminishing the weight that term carries. And I've already been saying that for like a year and a half. Again, I have reason to believe that Intrepid Corp is swarming all over places like Kiwi Farms, and I have reason to believe that these are their China tier censorship tactics to steer the internet to hate people that they don't want to have an influence. Now, I don't necessarily think they give a shit about Wes Watson, but what I'm saying is that the lol cow culture is also a psyop that has ties to government organizations. Now, people like Chris Chan and Cyrax are like true blue lol cows, but then you get people saying that, oh, Ethan Ralph is a lol cow. Don't listen to his political opinions because he did this and he did that. And these people are like paparazzi, and they pay people to obsessively like not blink while watching hours and hours and hours of their footage to like compile every little clip. This is what people did to me as well. These are government tactics to try to smear people. They established the term lol cow from true blues like Chris Chan and Cyrax, who even though I even have a little bit of sympathies for Cyrax at times, these are ridiculous people. But then you take people who aren't quite as ridiculous, like me, or Nick Fuentes, or Ethan Ralph, or now Wes Watson, and then you call them lolcows. It's like, remember guys, a lolcow is like Cyrax and Chris Chan, so Nick Fuentes, a political figure, is like Cyrax and Chris Chan, because we say so, because we're calling him a lolcow. Ruination by association. So, and these are kind of just tangents. Clearly I'm chomping at the bit to talk about this stuff. Maybe in later videos we'll go really, really, really deep on that subject. But, yeah, when you call Wes Watson a lolcow, and the dude, More Plates, More Dates was saying that he was blasting roids. He can tell from his body that in his heyday, when his channel was blowing up, he was definitely blasting roids. He went to his old social media posts and pointed out, yeah, see, he used to look like this, and then at some point, he all of a sudden looks like this. That's fine, guys, and then that's a different subject altogether, like on the ethics of taking steroids. It's very common. You grow up thinking it's some like myth or legend that doesn't happen a lot. There's people everywhere on roids, dude. There's people in your gym on roids. There's real life people, celebrities, people who like get a lot of compliments, people who are at the top of the fitness industry who are on steroids and performance enhancing drugs. There are people who are claiming that they're natural who are on steroids and performance enhancing drugs. It happens, okay? It's not completely out of the ordinary for somebody to be a fitness influencer to be on performance enhancing drugs. So when people try to say, oh, Wes Watson's on steroids, like, he doesn't deserve any influence, it's kind of bullcrap. But I think I've about exhausted that. Something that was dug up, dirt on him, is he was charging like $3,000 for some sort of like a life coaching fitness plan, and somebody came out and said it was crappy, which is whatever. You get, you're the one who paid for it. But apparently he made death threats to this person and said he was going to get one of his homeboys to attack him and his family. I can't sign off on that. I have no defense for him. All I can say about Wes Watson is that the dude was in prison. And sometimes people who are in prison go back to prison. And it's making me sad. I'm happy that he has money. I'm happy that he lives in a mansion. People are like, oh, dude, he's paying for a freaking escort to hang out with them. Is it kind of cringe that he lied about it? Sure. But at the end of the day, he's going to bed with that chick, dude. I mean, most men would have to pay at this point, bro. That's just how it is. I'll just blurt out right now, dude. If for whatever reason I'm ever some huge influencer and I make a bunch of money, would I be above like paying a chick however much it costs to like hang out with me for a couple weeks and bang and live with me? Of course. I probably wouldn't lie about it because I'm a fucking chud. But I'm just, oh, he does steroids. Oh, he's paying for an escort. It's like, dude, the thing that is like over the line is that he flipped out at somebody and made death threats. Now, I'm not somebody who can lecture anybody about that. I've gone overboard a couple of times, too. The dude has anger issues. The dude went to prison, man. And I'm glad that people are calling him a lolcow, bro, because that term lolcow is played out. It's really clear, like, oh, we've gone from Chris Chan and Cyrax to, oh, now Wes Watson, a guy who could, like, beat up 80% of you is a lolcow. So that's what I got to say about Wes Watson. I legitimately feel bad for him. The dude has a big-ass mansion. The dude's got money. The dude built a big YouTube channel, and I see that he's getting canceled right now. And I hear about him, like, making death threats, and he's not handling it well. He's not handling getting canceled well. And there's a chance that he could lash out and do something that ends his ass back in prison. And I don't want that, dude. I don't want that for him. I see that he made an ass of himself on the Fresh and Fit panel. I see that, like, he had kind of a shit take on Jeff Nippard, but I thought it was funny, bro. I think shit takes are funny. I'm actually thinking about creating a series called Shit Takes, where I give my thoughts on, like, a popular internet trend of somebody getting canceled, and I just give a shit take. Like, whatever it is, I just give a really comically, like, against the grain, disagreeing with what everybody else says. I think that's hilarious, dude. I thought I really enjoyed his take on the Jeff Nippard situation, even though I didn't really agree with it. So that's what I got to say about Wes Watson. That's what I got to say about Trevor Jacob. So last place of the three people I'm going to mention is Mike Van Wyck. I hadn't ever seen his content in the past. He's not somebody that I was familiar with. I had no idea who he was, and then all of a sudden he gets in this beef with Jeff Nippard, and now he's getting canceled. And what I basically just never like to see, guys, in conclusion, I don't want to see the guy lose his business. I don't want to see the guy go to jail. I don't want to see his channel get destroyed. I don't like how the internet hate machine tries to like be this instrument of wrath. Now, do I ever think somebody could do something to deserve it? Yes. And I don't think Trevor Jacob deserves it at all. I feel bad for Wes Watson and understand that he has anger issues because he was in prison, and he probably had anger issues before he went to prison, and that's part of how he got there. I've had anger issues in the past. I empathize with Wes Watson. All he's really done is mouthed off. And so I don't think he really deserves it either. Mike Van Wyck is riding the line of where it's like, you know what? I think you probably deserved to get kicked out of the gym. I think you probably deserved to get a wake-up call from people on the internet. I think it's probably deserved to be acknowledged that you were jealous of Jeff Nippard, who probably has a bigger, definitely now he has a much bigger YouTube channel and influence than you. And out of your jealousy, you point out these superficial things like, oh, well, you're small, so nothing you say matters. You think I got a dog in that fight, bro? I'm small, and I try to give fitness and martial arts advice, and you think I've never had anybody say, oh, dude, well, you're a little tiny dude, and, so nothing you say matters, bro. I used to have people tell me I couldn't play drums because I was small, bro. Okay? I know how that is, and I basically have every reason to just bring my own tub of gasoline and pour it on the freaking Mike Van Wyck cancellation fire. But the point of this video, guys, is that's not the kind of person I am. I don't like cancel culture. I already made a video, if you haven't seen it, called Cancel Culture is the Antichrist Religion. And I believe that. It's a hate machine. It literally has ties to government organizations with chief scientists who hate Christians and are aligned with Satanism. Okay? It's ugly. It's extremely ugly. And what I think justice is, and yes, I do think that the masses on the internet can kind of be a manifestation of justice. I think Mike Van Wyck should have been kicked out of the gym. Sure. I think he should have been embarrassed and made it clear that he was in the wrong. But as far as assault charges, there's a spectrum of assault charges. He should maybe have to pay a fine, and he's also dug himself even deeper by not making an apology. He's covered in all these tattoos, and I wonder if he did some prison time. I do kind of empathize with guys who have done hard time, probably are traumatized, and they have this extremely hard exterior where they don't want to go to this kind of emotional place, and they're just trying to hold up this hard exterior. And guys like Wes Watson, let's face it, he's getting outsmarted, he's getting outwitted on the Fresh and Fit. These are people from more well-to-do lifestyles. They were going to Ivy League schools while Wes Watson was in prison. Wes Watson learned from the streets. Mike Van Wyck might have learned from the streets as well. I value it. I'm somebody who's kind of in between worlds. I've read a lot of fancy books. I pride myself to be a philosopher and a theologian and all these things and an intellectual. But I can understand the merit of some of the street knowledge that comes from people like Wes Watson and maybe Mike Van Wyck. I don't know. I haven't really watched a lot of Mike Van Wyck content. I think I've picked a perfect assortment of examples. These are all relevant to what's happening right now. I went right down the line. Trevor Jacob, everybody should just frick off, dude. He did a stunt and it was reckless, but nobody got hurt. Wes Watson has anger issues. He's kind of getting outwitted by people who didn't go to prison, and I just feel for him. Mike Van Wyck did something that's very difficult to excuse. I don't even have a reason to want to excuse it. because he basically like bullied someone who just had not much of a means of defending him. It was like a heavyweight versus a freaking featherweight, dude. And I just think that there's people that want to see his entire life destroyed over it. And even though he's in the wrong, and this is part of what the Bible says, this is part of what Christ taught, you know, loving your enemies, forgiving 70 times 7. Maybe Mike Van Wyck and maybe this situation is like the last kind of person that I would want to forgive or have understanding for. And it seems like Mike Van Wyck isn't even really sorry. But I'm looking beneath the surface and I see a hardened up guy. He's got all these tattoos. He looks like he might have did some prison time. And he's not handling it well. And he's pushing things in a direction. Both him and Wes Watson are pushing things in a direction where they could just get full on canceled and lose their career. I don't want to see that. I don't want to see people destroyed. I don't want to see people lose their careers. Now, is there a level of things that you could do wrong where maybe that would be justified? Absolutely. And it's the kind of things that I don't even really need to be listing off because everybody is in agreement on. Hurting children, hurting women, heinous murder, savagely brutality. You know what I'm saying? Like, and then again, when I said in my video on Jeff Nippard and Mike Van Wyck is like, he didn't really punch him, dude. He freaking like grabbed him by the throat and threw him. He tripped over a bench. He could have freaking hit his head. I mean, I was wrestling in my room once and somebody took me down and I remember thinking like, whoa, if I would have hit my head on my desk, that would have been bad. Shit happens when people get in fights, dude. And it wasn't much of a fight. He like threw him by the neck. And I did think it was just a little bit comical that Jeff went and got an MRI. Because I'm pretty sure that things like that have happened to me. One time this huge Samoan football player, when I was at a party that, like, after I left, he started just randomly hitting people. He freaking grabbed me by the lapels and was like, who the fuck is this dude, guys? Who the fuck is this goofy little guy? I'm like, dude, I'm Jake Shields. I'm cool, man. And he was shaking me hard, man. He was shaking me really, really, really hard. You think about how big and strong I was compared to this guy. It's the same kind of territory. Like, this guy is, like, so much bigger than me that he could harm me by doing what he was doing. And I smiled and I got through it. There's nothing that I could do. That's the reality of life. Some guys are bears, some guys are goats, bro. We are human beings. You can win in other ways. But I guess that's all I have to say about it, guys. Like, I do not hate who the internet tells me to hate. I know about things like Operation Earnest Voice, where the government is literally trying to get you to hate people for nefarious reasons that are in line with Chinese tier censorship. I more than know about it. I've experienced it personally. These people have tried to ruin my life. In not my best moments, not my shiniest, brightest moments, but those moments are all years in the past now, and I think I have more than vindicated myself time and time and time again, and there continues to be people who want to see horrible things happen to me for unjust reasons, and they want to try to take you, the viewer, and use you as a tool. These are means of manipulation to weaponize the masses against the individual. I will never take part in it, and I ask that you guys find the maturity and the Christ-likeness inside yourselves to do the same. Do not hate who the internet tells you to hate. You shouldn't hate anybody. God bless.